A quaint, religiously conservative community in central Ohio turned into a violent gang after a power hungry bishop declared himself the forever leader. He twisted scripture to encourage attacks, and then the feds came knocking. This week's episode is the Bergholz Beard-Cutting Attacks. Sinisterhood. This is one we saw on How I Escaped My Cult, and it was fascinating
what a
on there.
show that is, first of all.
Yeah, first of all the episodes, but it was like there's got to be more to this, and there's just more of what's in the show. Yeah, for sure.
It was a fascinating episode. I don't know much about the Amish, and I didn't know that their beards and the women's hair are, they are sacred.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Attacking someone and cutting it off is essentially worse than murder for them.
Right. And
worse than death.
The religious tie of it makes it worse. Like, it's like, this isn't just a physical change in me. This has a spiritual ramification. Mm-hmm. And that's that episode centers around Johnny Mast, who will come up in this, and he's gone on to write a book and everything. So really, this is one of those situations where it's an insular community where almost you never hear about what really is going on in there, because they're not giving interviews. They don't take pictures. It's all part of the religious practice. So it's really like a front row seat to something that made headlines in 2011.
Yeah, that whole series, everyone we've watched, they have been real tough to stomach. This one, first one that didn't involve kids, so there was that at least. But if you are interested in cults, I do recommend that show, because they cover a lot of the more nefarious ones, for sure.
And from a first-person perspective, which is always valuable.
It's fascinating to hear someone that lived it tell like a firsthand account and what it was like escaping, and even providing, like footage and video and stuff. It is, like you said, a look into a world that rarely do outsiders get to see.
Absolutely. I can't recommend Breakaway Amish enough. It's Johnny Mast's book. And to go from like, we'll talk a little bit. We don't talk as much about the educational wise, but the Amish won a Supreme Court case that they're allowed to stop education after 8th grade. And for having that, to be able to go on and go, I want to write a book about this. It's incredible. And it's very well written. And it's a good first person, almost like you feel like you're reading somebody's diary, a lot of the thoughts and feelings that come out. So we tried to weave that into the episode as well.
Well, I'm Christy.
I'm Heather.
And let's get into it. The origins of the Amish trace back to the 16th century Protestant Reformation in Europe, a period marked by sweeping religious upheaval. During this time, the Anabaptist movement emerged in 1525, advocating for adult baptism, pacifism, and a strict separation between church and state. These radical beliefs invited intense persecution from both religious and civil authorities.
I didn't know it was a big deal to say, well, we want you to want to be a part of this. So adult baptism is like shocking.
I liked that, because they were like, until you can commit, AKA consent to you want to devote your life to God, we're going to hold off, because traditionally it's when they're babies and, you baptize them. So I was like, good for you for being like, no, you have to tell us as an adult that this is what you want to do. You're still probably going to be raised and all of it and whatnot without, whether you want to or not.
That's just where we're born.
Yeah. But I found that interesting too. Yeah.
Yeah, I got no beef with pacifism or a strict separation of church and state either.
No, I'm big fans of both of those. In 1693, a division within the Anabaptist ranks gave birth to the Amish, led by the reform-minded Jacob Ammon. Ammon insisted on a more rigorous application of biblical principles, including the practice of shunning excommunicated members and maintaining uniform dress and religious discipline. Though his efforts at reconciliation with the Mennonites failed, the Amish movement he founded endured, forming tightly knit, deeply religious communities throughout Europe.
And people joke about shunning from The Office. Dwight Schrute does it. But Dwight Schrute's from this area. But it's a real thing we talked about it in the JW episodes. But
Scientology does it.
1693, they were like, shun.
Which kind of makes you realize that for a long time, the most primeval thing you can strip from someone to punish them is human contact and interaction.
Right? Like the idea that community is so central to our survival as a species, which I think it is. I think that's why when babies are born and they can cry, because like crying out for help is like our number one thing we can do as humans and going to that aid. So being like, the one thing you need, no, you can't have.
By the early 18th century, continuous persecution prompted Amish families to immigrate to North America in search of religious freedom. The first significant Amish settlement was established in 1740 in Berks County, Pennsylvania. Over time, more Amish migrated westward, particularly into the fertile rolling hills of eastern Ohio. The terrain reminded many of their Swiss homeland, and by the 1800s, Holmes County, Ohio had become a central hub of Amish life. Today, it is the largest Amish community in the United States.
And it really is. I mean, we driving through there, you see like roadside stands, stuff you can buy. They sell their stuff at farmers markets. And I did not know until researching this, the folks that live there are like direct descendants. There, you can trace them all back to the very earliest adapters of the Amish faith.
Ohio's Amish communities, especially in Holmes, Wayne, and Tuscarawas counties, are known for their rural character, horse-drawn buggies, and minimal use of modern technology. These communities maintain a quiet but powerful presence, blending deeply rooted traditions with a strong sense of communal identity.
And I guess it's like Christianity where some are like extreme Orthodox, like they don't have plumbing inside. And then some are like, well, some of us have cell phones, but we generally leave them in a drawer.
Or some have complete TikToks where of accounts I follow where they're making churned butter and stuff. So, and they have millions of followers. So there's some that I think it's accepted if you have some modern amenities. You're not, probably don't have the newest Apple flat screen on your wall.
No,
but you might
sure.
have a phone to text and kind of keep in touch with the outside world.
I'm like, in the community, we're about to talk about one phone in one person's house. And I'm like, what if something goes wrong? And I think the one phone in the one house, I mean, that means whoever has the phone is the one in charge. But it's not that they like don't want to have technology. It's the idea of like remaining humble under God. So it is sort of like if you decide I can have a TikTok and I can still remain humble, then I guess it works. It's not like a hard and fast no phones rule.
At the heart of Amish life is the Gemeinde, or Gemay, which means church community. It is far more than a place of worship. It is the social, spiritual, and cultural nucleus of Amish life. The Gemay governs not only religious practice, but also daily living and community decision-making. Central to the Ardnung, the unwritten code of behavior that each community follows, are guidelines that dictate clothing, technology, farming practices, and interactions with the outside world. While the Ardnung varies between settlements, its core function remains the same: to preserve religious purity and community cohesion. When a member of the community violates the Ardnung and refuses to repent, the Amish practice shunning. This social discipline involves avoiding contact with the offender, including eating together or conducting business. Though emotionally painful, shunning is intended to encourage repentance and maintain spiritual and communal integrity.
And if the person who is shunned goes back to the people that he wronged or she wronged and really makes a true repentance and apologizes, they'll let you back in, but you really have to really mean it. And they said, we believe behavior follows intent. And it's like, if you apologize and keep doing it, we'll shun you again. So I like that. It's like we're forgiving, but not doormats.
I don't think I'm ever going to condone shunning, so I can't say I like that.
No, I like that you can come back from it. It's not like JW style, like you can never come back. We'll never talk to you again. The Amish people, I mean, when they specifically point to when there was that attack on their schoolhouse, that they went to the attacker's family's house and were like, we want to talk to you. And if you as the family are like, we do not condone this, they're like, we forgive you and your family. I mean, it is a deeply forgiving community. Deeply forgiving, but you have to, the forgiveness part or the repentance part has to come first of like, I'm sorry for what I did.
Yes, I do agree that they're deeply forgiving. I also think at the same time, the act of shunning period is harmful on many levels. So any organized religion that practices it, I can't get behind it.
Especially if it's like you're letting religious beliefs come between you and your family, a mother-daughter relationship or something.
Another cornerstone of Amish belief is Gelassenheit, a term that translates to yielding or submission. It embodies humility, calm acceptance of God's will, modesty, and self-denial. Gelassenheit is reflected in all aspects of Amish life, from their simple dress and speech to their cooperative work ethic and avoidance of personal pride. Religious customs extend even to appearance. For Amish men, growing a beard after marriage is a public symbol of marital status and religious commitment. Mustaches, on the other hand, are traditionally avoided due to their association with military men, which clashes with the Amish emphasis on pacifism. Amish women, meanwhile, never cut their hair. They wear it pinned up under a prayer bonnet, signifying modesty and submission to God's order.
And that woman you showed me on her TikTok, it was fascinating to see how the length of hair has to get twisted up and the pain that those pins must cause. She said that causes migraines.
They got a whole process for getting all that hair up under there. And she did say it is very uncomfortable if you get headaches. So I'm out for several reasons, but this one might be the final nail in the coffin. I'm like, I can't wear something that constantly gives me a migraine. But it's wild that from birth, your hair is never cut. So, I mean, you're in your 20s and it's down to past your butt probably.
Yeah. However, I mean, and I guess with some people, your hair just grows to a length and stops. But I remember as a kid, I saw some lady on TV that her hair was touching the ground. And I thought, if you never cut your hair, will it really grow that long? Maybe. I don't know. But it seems like a lot to stuff under a bonnet with that. It's a lot of pins.
Seems like a lot of maintenance to wash, to blow dry, to if it's dragging the ground, it's got to get dirty and stuff.
And if you're in one of the communities where you can't have any electricity, it's like I guess you ride a bicycle in the, something to let it air dry. I like to stick my head out the window, but ain't none of that. Sinisterhood will be right back. If your dog could talk, they would warn you about what is lurking in their food bowl. Mass-produced kibble isn't just unappetizing. It could be a crime against canine health. Mysterious byproducts, unpronounceable preservatives, and who knows what kind of fillers. Sounds more like evidence from a crime scene than what you would want to eat for dinner.
Well, Ollie is here to crack the case on pet nutrition with fresh, human-grade meals made with the highest quality ingredients. No mystery meats, no artificial junk, just real, minimally processed food made in U.S. kitchens. It's the kind of clean eating that keeps tails wagging and noses sniffing for more.
How it works is you fill out Ollie's 30-second quiz. They create a customized meal plan based on your pup's weight, activity level, and other health info. Then you get expert recommendations. Ollie will crunch the numbers and recommend the right recipes and daily portions for your precious pup based on hundreds of real dog results. Then you get your welcome kit. So any first-timers, Ollie will send your pup's first box with 2 weeks worth of meals and a guide on how to gradually switch them over to their new diet. Then you customize your plan. Ollie offers 3 meal plans to choose from. You choose between full fresh plan, fresh topper plan, or a mixed plan with their freshly baked recipes for your special fur baby. They also have treats and supplements. Ollie is the only fresh dog food that comes with unlimited routine health screening so you can get your pup on track to living their healthiest, happiest life.
Kate loves them. She loves those peanut butter treats. Keep them in the bedroom so I can just get them to her at will. And also, I've said before, it has the best closing zipper.
Satisfying.
Yeah. And also just like it sticks better than any type of package you got to open and then you got to try and get it to close back. But I don't know. Yeah. They got the top tier type of closing things for these packages.
It feels like it's made by dog people because we need that. We need the pup tainer and scooper. We know we need food that they're going to eat and they're going to love. And Ollie checks all of the boxes. Dogs deserve the best, and that means fresh, healthy food. Head to ollie.com/creepy. Tell them all about your dog and use code CREEPY to get 60% off your welcome kit when you subscribe today.
Plus, they offer a happiness guarantee on the first box. So if you're not completely satisfied, you'll get your money back. That's OLLIE.com/creepy and enter code CREEPY to get 60% off your first box.
Sinisterhood will be right back.
Samuel Mullett Sr. was born in 1945 into a traditional Amish settlement about 45 miles east of Cleveland, Ohio. He was the third of 12 children, raised within a conservative Anabaptist framework. During his early adulthood, Mullett worked in a mental health ward during wartime, where he reportedly shaved heads and beards.
Because, if you're a pacifist and you say, I'm not going to serve, they're like, you have to serve somehow. So he was like, I gave people haircuts, I shaved their faces. And I'm like, interesting.
At the age of 20, Mullet married 18-year-old Martha, and together they had 18 children, 2 of whom died young, one from pneumonia at age 8 and another from cancer at 25. Among their children is a son named Christ, pronounced Christ, a name that, while anecdotal, reflects a bold, perhaps provocative, sense of naming within a deeply religious family.
Listening to Donald Craybill is the other book I read called Renegade Amish, and I did not know that he had a son named Christ, and he kept going, Christ Mullet. Like the audiobook would be like, and then Christ Mullet. And I was like, Christ Mullet
is kind of a rad name, though.
We're Christ Mullet. It's a rock and roll religious band.
It is bold, though, and sends a message to name one of your own offspring,
Christ.
after the big guy.
The one. He's like different. It's a different Christ. It's actually short for Christy. It's after Judge Christy.
Christy. In 1977, the Mullet family joined the Frederickstown Amish settlement in Ohio. However, by 1995, Mullet expressed dissatisfaction with what he perceived as the, quote, drift, a moral and doctrinal loosening within the community. He led his family and a small group of loyal followers to establish a new ultra-conservative Amish settlement in Bergholz, a remote area in Jefferson County. There, Mullet quickly assumed increasing spiritual authority. Though he was ordained as a minister in 1997, by 2001 he had self-declared himself bishop, an unusual and unauthorized move within Amish polity, which traditionally requires affirmation from a broader council of elders and bishops. This irregularity in ordination and the centralization of power around Mullet marked the beginning of Bergholz's divergence from mainstream Amish life.
You should be careful if someone's like, we're going to be the most conservative, lockdown place. Follow me.
It always takes one breaking off, and then they go extra hard and things go bad.
Well, they got there and he's like, I'm going to be the minister and my 2 sons are the other ministers. And it's
Christ.
going to be a 3-man panel to decide the bishop. And it's like, the 3 men are you and your 2 sons. And then in real community, you put different people's potential contenders for bishops' names in the Bible and you flip through, and then whoever's name comes out, that's who gets it. Nobody was watching over his shoulder as he's like, oh, look, the name I picked out was my own. And they're all like, and it's just like, that's not how it's done. But, you're off by yourself.
Yeah, there's no one to tell him no. Life in Bergholz was marked by extreme discipline, enforced submission, and social isolation. Mullet maintained a tight grip over his followers through spiritual manipulation and authoritarian control. Regular church services were abandoned, replaced with confession meetings where members were pressured to publicly admit sins. Mullet described traditional Amish services as a
phony cover for sinful daily living.
He encouraged public humiliation as a path to purification. Nobody ever wants to do that. This sounds very Twins Flamish, or any cult where you're like, get up and tell everybody what you did wrong. Even Catholics, can sometimes do that.
Yeah,
so
at least you get to do it in a box under cover of secrecy and not in front of the whole group. But
JWs, he also, for sure.
Definitely. And he would also say, oh, well, you can't go over to, the XYZ settlement anymore because they're not spiritually pure. So you can't talk to them anymore. So then the young people who rely on other communities to court and then eventually marry are suddenly like, well, I was talking to a girl from that settlement and now she says they're not going to talk to us anymore because we're a bunch of weirdos. So you just start to get that isolation. Well, then the people within Bergholz are like, well, we actually can't talk to anybody else. So I guess we have to just follow him.
And we also have to figure out how we're going to further our lineage if we can't meet anybody from outside of this community.
It's like, what are we going to do? And he also said, and by the way, I know some other communities rotate bishops. I'm the bishop forever. And it's like, oh, okay, well.
By the mid-2000s, unrest was growing in the Bergholz community. What had begun as a breakaway settlement rooted in the desire for a stricter, more faithful Amish life had morphed into something darker. Mullet's control over the community had intensified. Traditional church services were replaced with confession-based meetings where members were expected to admit sins publicly. The atmosphere became tense, isolating, and authoritarian.
They went from every other Sunday church service to every Wednesday from 8 p.m. to midnight. And you all had to sit at Sam's house and he would yell at you if he thought you weren't telling the truth.
8 to midnight. And this Synanon too.
Yes.
Has remnants of that.
Yeah. When he's like, write it all down and then goes, I don't think you're writing down the truth. It's like, why? Even if you wrote down everything you did, you still have this person go, nah, I think you're lying.
That's when you got to start false confessing to stuff to make somebody happy.
Making it up.
In 2005, murmurs of concern within Bergholz evolved into outright dissent. Families in the settlement, disturbed by the increasing severity of Mullet's leadership, began questioning his moral and spiritual decisions. Of particular concern was Mullet's practice of what he called
marital counseling.
This was when Mullet would have sexual relations with married women in his congregation, claiming these encounters were spiritually therapeutic, intended to
cleanse them of the devil.
It doesn't take long for sex to start getting involved in cults.
Right. Almost not quite right away, but pretty soon thereafter. Yeah. You get everybody to write their sins down, and then you kind of start to go, oh, there's maybe a little bit of a schism here between this couple. I can get in there. He says, sometimes I yell at my wife. Well, then I'm going to go, hey, he yells at you a lot. Come on to Sam's house and see if we can give you some counseling.
Use all of their admissions against them.
Mm-hmm.
A former member, Aidan Troyer, who was once married to Mullet's daughter, Wilma, testified that Mullet would ask women about the details of their sex lives with their husbands, behavior completely foreign and unacceptable in Amish tradition. Troyer told CNN,
he's the only guy and only leader that I know of that ever has gotten into an Amish couple's married life.
Which should tell you something, that it's very sacred. Again, with you're married, no more beard trimming. It shows you're a married person, arguably by the length. You could probably determine a little bit of how long someone has been married. So again, that is such a sacred relationship within their community. And he's just that's him sliding into wherever.
And because he was the forever bishop, even the people that were, young folks and married had grown up as children in the schoolhouse. Sam's sister was the teacher and would go, Sam won't like it if you do that, or you better hope Sam doesn't find out. So now you have this person who's been your whole life like the boogeyman over your shoulder of he's the one in charge. And now he's come to my house for counseling. And you don't go, oh, that seems weird. It's well, he said to, so I guess I have to.
It's very Warren Jeffs.
Yeah.
When members began to push back against Mullet's teachings and actions, his response was swift and severe. In 2006, he excommunicated 9 families from the Bergholz Church. These expulsions were not handled through the communal, scripturally based process typical of Amish disciplinary practices. Instead, they were unilateral decisions meant to silence opposition and consolidate his grip on power.
Yeah, he was pretty fast. He kicked his own wife out of the house and had her live somewhere else. I think probably because of,
he got to have a rotating door of women coming in.
Yeah. But he told her, you didn't write all your sins down, so you can't live with me now. And then if he's going to kick his own wife out, he's of course going to kick a family out that goes, I don't think I'm going to do that. No. And they started questioning him because he goes, well, if you don't write your sins down, you can pay me. Just give me $8,000.
Interesting.
And they would give him $5,000, $8,000. He'd go to the horse auction, buy a bunch of horses, come back. And the guys that he got the money from go, hey, did you want to buy some horses? And Johnny was the guys kind of said, no, that's our money. And so he started really pressing his luck. You're fucking our wives. You're taking our money, trying to sell us back the horses for my repentance money. And he's you know what? You're shunned permanently. And they're well, normally there's a community aspect to who is shunned. And he's not here. I am the one that decides. And God told me that you're shunned. So your money is gone. Your wife's been taken by this guy and now you're kicked out.
And probably have nowhere to go. So it's
right.
Do I stay here and put up with this misery or leave alone and start completely from scratch?
Mm-hmm.
The situation alarmed leaders in other Amish communities. On June 6, 2006, a small council of bishops from across the Amish world convened to address the situation. These leaders were disturbed by Mullet's increasingly erratic behavior and what they saw as a deviation from Amish values of humility, peace, and communal decision-making. Mullet declared to the Bergholz community that because the men met on 6606, their decision was guided by the devil and therefore illegitimate. His followers believed him.
And that's what Johnny Mast wrote. Like, isolated people are very easy to control, and they had nobody else to give them alternate opinions and go, what are you talking about? Because by then, nobody would talk to them.
No, they're in an echo chamber.
Yeah.
I mean, even today, that is very dangerous. Groups get into echo chambers, and it's all they hear, and you have a warped sense of information. You're being given, information that is misleading.
Yeah, you're just all being manipulated. And and the sad part, you've got no idea and no way to like fact check it against anything else.
Now, someone should have looked at the calendar when they were deciding when to have this. And they're like, 666?
That's fine.
Is everyone available?
That's the only day we're free. Let's do it. He's like, it only comes around once every 1,000 years. We got to take advantage.
Then maybe it does have some kind of meaning. Their response culminated in September of 2006 at a broader conference of 300 bishops held in Ulysses, Pennsylvania. There, after prayerful deliberation, the bishops reached a unanimous decision. Mullet's excommunications were spiritually invalid and must be overturned. The families he had expelled were welcomed into other Amish communities. In doing so, the bishops effectively declared that Samuel Mullet had overstepped his authority and was no longer recognized as a legitimate spiritual leader.
And this was also like right around the time when his daughter was going through a custody dispute with with Aidan Troyer, who had left and taken the kids. And Sam sort of used that to go, look, the whole world is against us. The bishops are against us. The sheriffs who came in and executed, they didn't execute him, but they executed this warrant and said, we've got to get the kids out of here or whatever. The optics of it certainly would support a us versus them mentality, when in reality, all that shit was caused by Sam Mullet. Literally every problem he caused. And then he just said, the outcomes of these issues are just proof that the devil is trying to take me and you down.
Yeah, it's very us versus them. Similar to like doomsday cults where like everything that happens is a sign of, once again, do you see how the devil has infiltrated everything that we do? And this is why we must, separate ourselves from it. When in reality, it's like, that's just the American court system.
Yeah.
And at no fault of your own, you're not familiar with it. So you don't understand like what's really going on here, which is very sad in a custody case.
True, right? I mean, she's just listening to her dad. Meanwhile, his daughter listening to her dad, and she loses custody of her kids because her dad's a cult leader.
Following the public rebuke of Samuel Mullet Sr. by the wider Amish bishopric in 2006, the Bergholz community entered a period of profound spiritual and emotional turmoil. Rather than reassessing his leadership, Mullet dug deeper into isolation, creating a closed, inward-facing group. Former members and prosecutors later described this period as a cult-like transformation, one in which traditional Amish beliefs were twisted to justify increasingly bizarre and coercive practices. Mullet viewed the overturning of his excommunications not as a correction, but as a sign that the outside world was persecuting him and his people. His followers believed that they were being spiritually attacked by the rest of the Amish culture. Mullet used this narrative to consolidate control further. He ceased holding church services altogether, calling them a hypocritical facade. In their place, he instituted mandatory group, quote, social meetings, which often revolved around confessions, accusations, and emotional purging. In a later interview with the New York Times, Mullet explained,
"We felt God was against us. The community was sinning, and the men were not leading Christian lives." You just look back at that time and go, what? I mean, you get so deep into it, I guess you don't know to question things.
When it's your whole life, too, like your religion and your faith is your whole life, this becomes everything. Like if you're not working towards it, then you're working against it. So if you're not part of it, then it's like, well, we don't need you anymore. It's not like you're just like a little Amish with them.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah.
all in with this way that he's doing stuff, or you got to get out.
And I think because of, I mean, Sam obviously knew, being like, I'm so conservative and know all the Amish rules. I think he knew where to pull the levers and manipulate people, and also knew where he could take advantage of the wives. Financially, he would have like his grandson or the other young men in the community. He'd go, leave your family and come live with me. Well, in the Amish community, all of the children's wages until they get married and go out on their own go to the parents. And then the parents, provide them with shoes and clothes and food. Well, so when all those guys started living with Sam, all their wages were going to Sam. They weren't going back to their families, and Sam was making their families pay their expenses. So he was, again, it's like he knew the Amish way, so he knew exactly how to manipulate it for his own gain.
Yeah, it was a big grift. One of the most striking shifts during this time was the introduction of voluntary hair cutting and beard shaving within the community. In the Amish world, a man's beard is a sacred symbol of marriage, masculinity, and faith. For women, long, uncut hair is tied to modesty and obedience to biblical tradition. Yet in Bergholz, these symbols were inverted. Followers began to cut their own hair or have it cut by others as a ritual of purification and repentance. According to Mullet's daughter Wilma, this practice began as an act of collective guilt following a traumatic child custody loss. The community interpreted the hardship as a divine punishment, and hair cutting was seen as a way to cleanse themselves and start anew.
Yeah, it's just like, this is the only way to humble ourselves, is to break this long-term norm that's been held since probably the 1600s, because this guy told us to. That's how deep in his claws were.
Taking away autonomy in a kind of opposite way than we would normally think of it. But this is, something that they hold on to themselves, stripping people of individuality like cult leaders love to do.
They love to do it.
In early 2010, Wilma and another woman forcibly shaved the beards of 7 men, including her brother, whom she accused of mistreating their wives. More beard and hair cutting episodes followed in the months ahead, all justified as spiritual rebirths. Other forms of punishment and isolation also emerged during this time. Mullet approved the use of chicken coops and goat pens as makeshift, quote, Amish jails, where disobedient men were required to sleep, sometimes for days or weeks. While Mullet insisted the doors were never locked, former residents reported the practice as humiliating and coercive. Additionally, he encouraged the use of wooden paddles as tools of adult discipline, urging men to physically strike each other to resolve disputes. Martha Mullet, his wife, told the New York Times that these practices initially shocked her, but came to
seem right for our people.
A chilling testament to how normalized abuse had become.
And it's wild because he chose like 5 or 6 guys to be like the good guys that were his like right-hand men, and then would have them go out and, lock him in the chicken coop, shave his beard while he's in the chicken coop or whatever. And the men that were on his right-hand men were like, well, we don't want to say no to him because then we'll be the ones in the chicken coop. And then he would just tell the ones in the chicken coop, you should uprise and you should beat up the guys that have been locking you in here. Take his house when he's at work. And the guys in the chicken coop were okay. And then break out. It's like he wanted to manipulate people and watch them like hurt and fight each other.
Yeah, I think he did. That's how you gain control, turning the masses against each other. And then, he kind of becomes even more of a savior to them.
And really trying to keep it from anybody else. They drug one of the gentlemen over like frozen ground, and it caused a lot of cutting and injuries. And Sam was very judicious about treating the cuts and the wounds and stuff. And Johnny was like, yeah, it's because he didn't want him to have to go to the hospital. Sam knew, if that gets infected, we're going to have to call and be like, hey, how'd your chest get all scraped up? Oh, I don't know. 6 of my friends drugged me like 30 feet in the snow. So it just went deeper and deeper. And for a man to later go, I wasn't running a cult though. It's like, you weren't.
You're running something that seems a lot like a cult.
Sinisterhood will be right back.
Well. Guess who ate 6 croissants over the past week?
Hell
Me.
Yeah. Ding, 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 ding. You are a winner. And 1 croissant is a good day. But God, that's
6
so good.
Hero bread croissants? Man, they're good. The texture is good. This might be a hot take. I don't love when a croissant is so flaky that it just like there's just crumbs everywhere and it's hard to eat and everything. The hero bread, it still has a little flake to it, but it's also like chewy and good texture and taste. It's just, they come in individual little plastic bags. So you can just put them in your purse on the go, keep them in your car, wherever.
With Hero Bread, you can focus on your health goals, but still indulge in the soft, fluffy experience you love, like a purse croissant. And you can enjoy a nutritious breakfast wrap, avocado toast, grilled cheese with some cozy soup, or everybody enjoys it on family burger night. Their products are delicious and flavorful, but they have ultra low net carbs, 0 grams of sugar, and are high in fiber, so you can feel good.
They're so good. We had burger night the other night. Used the Hero Bread buns. Ella's been real into avocado toast lately.
Hell yeah.
Use the Hero Bread for that. We all love it. We're a Hero Bread family.
And you'd never know it's low net carb and high fiber bread from the texture. Get that soft, fluffy experience you know and love with that next savory breakfast sandwich, a late night grilled cheese, or family taco Tuesday even.
Get monthly small batch drops of indulgent favorites like their 4-gram net carb bagel and new surprises coming this year.
Hero Bread is offering 10% off your order. Go to hero.co and use code CREEPY at checkout.
That's creepy at HERO.co.
Sinisterhood will be right back.
By this time, the Bergholz group had also abandoned the visual codes that tie Amish people together across communities. They began dressing differently from other Amish districts, creating further visual and cultural separation. This break in conformity, one of the bedrock values of Amish life, signaled to others that something in Bergholz had deeply changed.
Yeah, like folks would make mention of it at like auctions and stuff. And I think that further made them feel like their own insular group of like, well, now they're all talking bad about us. And it's like, well, they are.
Well, and you also now look different than all of them. So it's more of a reason that you stand out and are talked about. So it's another way for him to be like, see, these other communities aren't even going to accept you because we're different now, even though he's the one that imposed all these different rules upon, a centuries-long tradition.
Right. And just feeling powerful. That's just what he wanted.
As word of Bergholz's unusual practices spread, other Amish communities, local authorities, and outside observers began referring to the group as a cult. Jefferson County Sheriff Fred Abdallah described the Bergholz compound as a
valley of control
and said he would not be surprised to hear of mass tragedy occurring there.
If I were to get a call right now telling me, Sheriff, they're all dead in the community out there, it wouldn't surprise me.
He told CNN in 2011.
They were getting intense. I mean, I think by then Sam had like 4 women living in his house. He had, answered when questioned, like, why are you doing all this? Kind of said, because I get power from it. And and if you don't like it, get out. Like you can go sleep in the barn too. So no wonder that like, if you see them and talk to other Amish communities, they're like, yeah, Bergholz. Did you hear about Bergholz? It's like, well, if they don't call us out there, we can't go out there as police.
That is the catch is they don't usually call police because they're pacifists. So they wouldn't even call someone in. However, the pacifism that is the rule, so they don't call police, is what is being used against them right now because this is anything but the work of a pacifist.
So many times in that How I Escaped My Cult, the law enforcement were like, oh yeah, Amish people don't call police. They don't call police. Like over and over, it's just kind of known in that area. And I imagine if law enforcement knows that, Sam Mullet knows that. And so he's like, I'll drag him. And then he's not going to call police. He can't. I have the only phone.
True. By the summer of 2011, fractures between Bergholz members and the broader Amish community had grown dangerous. Among those most vocal was Marty Miller, a former Bergholz member who had rejected Mullet's authority. Marty's children, however, remained loyal to Mullet. In a pivotal moment at a machinery auction, Marty encountered some of his sons, now Bergholz loyalists, with their beards cut. Marty chastised them sharply.
If God is with you, your beard wouldn't have been cut. If God is with me, my beard will never be cut.
His words, intended as a challenge, became the spark for the violence to come. That's rough when you leave and your kids are in it and you've essentially lost your kids.
Yeah, and it was story
Not
after
even essentially,
story.
you just have.
Right, story after story, the parents would write desperate letters of like, "Please leave Bergholz. You always have a place with us. Like, as soon as you want to leave Bergholz, you can come join this new community. Like, even if Sam says you're excommunicated." So the parents all really tried to continue to hold lifelines for them, and they were just ardent observers of Sam because he convinced them that everybody else is cheating at the religion and we're the only ones doing it right, despite the fact that no other Amish ever has ever done those things.
It's interesting, too, that the parents left, the kids stayed. It's usually the opposite way, where the kids want to get out and the parents who are so deeply entrenched stay. To think that your children listen more to this cult leader than you and are more devoted to him than to you as parents and your family is gut-wrenching.
Yeah, it's losing your kids in a whole nother way. And one way that you're like, am I ever going to get them back? Like, how deep in are they?
Days later, on September 6, 2011, those same children and their spouses stormed Marty and Barb Miller's home, forcibly cutting Marty's beard and Barb's hair, a brutal response meant to demonstrate divine judgment. As they fled, one of the assailants reportedly shouted,
"God is not with you. God is not with you." Also, Barb Miller is Sam Mullet's sister. So he sent a dozen men to his sister's house in the back of a trailer because the Amish don't drive. They've got these drivers. And they just said 12 men in minor like style headlamps, like you'd go down spelunking, show up at your door. Your Amish house is very dark at like 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m. You're like in bed with candlelight or whatever. They fucking storm the house. It's like it really is a horror movie. And like you said earlier, for the folks that I've had this beard for 25 years since I married Barb, and to be held down like that, they just said they were screaming, crying, and taking photos of it.
Yeah. No, it's very sad to think of, to them, it's something worse than death to have, their sacred beard or hair removed. So, and again, it's like, okay, well, now what? Like, we would call the police if somebody stormed our house and attacked us. They don't do that. So then it's like, okay, well, tomorrow's a new day.
Right. And it's like, I guess we'll move on from here.
2 weeks later, on September 24th, another couple, David and Sarah Wingard, was attacked under similar circumstances. The perpetrators used battery-powered clippers, forcibly restraining their victims and cutting their hair.
Yeah, they lured David Wingard to Bergholz. His brother-in-law was still a member and was like, "Hey, just come back for a quick visit. We'll just go out for a walk in the pasture." And the photo of David Wingard is one of the saddest ones because he's just walking in the pasture like for the before, because Sam wanted befores and afters. And he's just kind of looking off into the pasture with his full beard. And the next image is he's got his head tucked down really sad. And just the look of, it's just a crunched face of just pain and shame and leaning down. And you could just tell how devastated he was, especially that you got lured to go visit your brother-in-law by a letter. Like you were just like, oh, finally they want to reach out. My estranged brother-in-law. Meanwhile, you get attacked in a pasture like that.
The next attack occurred on October 4th, intended to be more than just a form of shaming and spiritual, quote, correction. This attack was a symbolic escalation. Bishop Raymond Hirschberger had participated in the 2006 Ulysses meeting where Mullet's excommunications were overturned. He was targeted as a representative of the wider Amish church, making the attack not just personal, but theological. Soon after, Myron Miller, another former follower turned critic, was also attacked.
They rolled up in Hirschberger's house and were like, "We're from Bergholz. We're here because of what you did with our shunned people. Wasn't your name on the committee?" And he just started screaming, "Don't shear me, don't shear me." And the footage of him, he's like an older guy. And it was like 27 members had gone to this auction and like parked outside of his house, and then just 5 of them went in to do this, and they came out with these bags of hair and they'd bring it back to Sam to show him what he did. And they did 2 in one night. They attacked him at 9:30 and got Myron Miller at 10:45. Like, they were efficient. The poor driver's just like, where to next?
It's really eerie to think of this happening, out in the countryside with
Darkness,
little electricity. There's not a lot of noise, and you just hear screams throughout. And the sound of A razor? Yeah, shears.
Myron Miller said he heard through his door, "Hey, Myron, we want to talk with you." Which is very eerie. And they grabbed scissors and were cutting him. And I think he's the one that he managed to grab one of them's beard and yanked as hard as he could and took a chunk out of it. And Myron Miller, for as Amish as he was like, had told his wife weeks before, if they ever come for me, I'm calling the police. And she's like, I support you. And so bleeding, because they had the scissors, Myron runs outside, catches the license plate on the truck. And that's like the only way, is that he called 911. And luckily there was, we'll talk about it a little later, an former Amish detective who was able to kind of shepherd them through it, because it is like very difficult to like break what you feel like is a spiritual, like, no, like you're like, I'm not supposed to report anyone, but you also know if I don't do this, more harm will come to others. And that's what Myron thought. He's like, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but it's the only way I can stop the harm.
Yeah. It's also, if you've never done that and you're an adult, it would be a scary thing to do. You're like, I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to really say in this situation, but here's what's going on.
Right.
On October 8th, 2011, local authorities made initial arrests after the first 3 attacks, and Sam Mullet reportedly promised there would be no more violence. But that promise proved empty. The final attack occurred on November 9th, with victims Melvin and Anna Schrock again forcibly restrained and humiliated. In total, the violence had affected 9 victims across 5 incidents.
It's wild. Those folks were on $50,000 bond, which Sam paid, and they still attacked somebody else. Again, they lured them there with a letter saying, Melvin and Anna, don't you want to see your grandchildren that you're estranged from? Come to Bergholz and see your grandchildren. Meanwhile, their friends were like, don't go to Bergholz because you probably are going to get attacked. And Melvin's like, but what if the kids want to leave? We want to be there for our kids and like help them escape if they want to. And their beards were cut.
That's also what Mullet knows, that so that he uses those vulnerabilities to prey on who he wants to come back. If they really want it out, I don't think they're going to Sam and company to say, hey, can you help us? Because they know what's going to happen. Historically, the Amish avoid law enforcement and prefer internal resolution. But these attacks were so shocking and the threat so immediate that many Amish families broke their silence. Some called the police for the first time in their lives. Others purchased pepper spray, an unprecedented step for communities that shun violence. Detective Joe Mullet, an English-speaking officer unrelated to Sam Mullet, was instrumental in gaining the victims' trust. He spoke the Amish dialect and understood their culture, making it easier for survivors to share their stories and pursue justice.
And several of the victims said they felt that Detective Mullet happening to get that case, because he wasn't even assigned that division. He was like on call the night that Melvin's call came through, and then just decided to take it up because they were like, this is culturally probably a good fit. That because he had that background, that several of the victims were like, well, we weren't going to talk, but we feel like you being here is divinely inspired by God. Like God gave you to us to help us.
Well, I'm glad that they had somebody there that can kind of bridge that, the gap between like, we've never done this before. I've literally never called the police. I'm in my 60s and like, what now? But having someone that you feel comfortable with, of course, is going to make it easier.
And literally speaks your language. Sinisterhood will be right back.
This episode of Sinisterhood is brought to you by Graza. Graza is our olive oil of choice. It's top-notch, extra virgin olive oil at an affordable everyday price.
Graza is always fresh, never blended, and made from one kind of olive from one place, the Picual olive from high-end Spain, where over half the world's olive oil is produced.
Graza also offers 3 unique varieties for any cooking task. You got Frizzle, the newest blend with an impressive 490 degrees Fahrenheit smoke point. This is perfect for frying, crisping, or grilling. We're on the cusp of summer. Here, it kind of already is. Everybody's grilling and stuff. This is perfect for that. You also have Sizzle at 410 degrees Fahrenheit. This is what you use every day for roasting, marinating, sauteing. And then you got Drizzle, a bold, punchy finishing oil that elevates your salads, breads, maybe even a scoop of ice cream.
And talk about convenience, Graza comes in these super fun squeeze and spray bottles. Forget the messy tins, the drippy sprouts. Just aim, squeeze, and you're ready to go. I'm not kidding. I literally eat this every single morning on my toast. And the squeeze bottle, I like it. And I've gotten to where I like do a little like a flare when I'm doing it.
Mm.
I'm not a chef, but when I'm squeezing olive oil on toast, I feel fancy with
You
graza,
feel
and
like one.
it tastes good.
You'll get 10% off your first order of any olive oil on their site, but we wholeheartedly recommend the trio. That's all 3 squeezy bottles, sizzle, frizzle, and drizzle. So you're set for every style of cooking.
So head to graza.co and use Creepy to get 10% off Trio, which includes sizzle, frizzle, and drizzle, and get to cooking your next chef quality meal. Sinisterhood will be right back.
On October 19th, 2011, police and prosecutors from Holmes and Carroll counties met with the FBI. The federal agents were there to determine whether any federal crimes had been committed. Local authorities had called them in because of the complex, multi-county nature of the case. Victims had been hit across 5 counties in Ohio, making the potential prosecution of the cases cumbersome. On October 24th, the FBI officially opened a case on Bergholz. They relied on the Hate Crimes Prevention Act of 2009, marking an unusual instance of federal hate crime law being applied within the same faith community. After conducting its own investigation, the FBI decided to arrest the perpetrators on the day before Thanksgiving. On November 23, 2011, around 5 a.m., a team of around 80 FBI agents and local police descended on the Bergholz community. They entered Sam Mullet's home and banged on the closed bedroom door. He called out,
"I'm getting dressed."
When he emerged, the FBI arrested him, though he was
very friendly, very charming, easy to talk to,
according to later agent testimony. Lavina Miller, the 28-year-old wife of his nephew, emerged from his bedroom after him. Authorities also arrested several of his male followers in the early morning raid. Officers found marijuana seeds and cocaine in his barn. Mullet was taken into custody from his farmhouse.
His very friendly, very charming demeanor also included lying to the FBI because they straight up asked him, Sherry Papini style, point blank, were you engaged in this? Were you engaged in this? They went through every single one of the beard cutting incidents. And for several of them, he's like, well, I knew about that. But others, he's like, no, I had no idea. I didn't do anything. And so then the FBI is like, we will be charging you with lying to the FBI.
I wonder how they got weed and coke.
I know, right? I'm like, Sam's just out there. He also had like oil gas or like oil leases on some of the land that he had bought. And like, he had a lot of, I think, financial schemes going on.
Shady dealings.
Like, yes, that even like haven't even come out despite him being arrested. Like they also like you said, where are you getting the weed and the coke from? And who's it going to?
Probably him, I would imagine.
Yeah, perhaps.
Outside his house, followers wept as their leader was led away in handcuffs. Over the next month, 16 individuals, including 10 men and 6 women from the Bergholz community, were formally indicted by a federal grand jury. The indictment charged them with multiple counts, including conspiracy, kidnapping, and violating the Matthew Shepard James Byrd Hate Crimes Act for the beard and haircutting assaults. It also included charges of obstruction of justice for attempts to conceal or destroy evidence, such as the scissors and hair. Even though Sam Mullet did not personally participate in the physical attacks, he was charged as the mastermind who solicited and directed the crimes.
It is my understanding from Johnny's book that when people would come back with bags of hair, Sam would give it to Johnny and be like, okay, go outside and burn it. And so he had to burn hair, which he's like, it smells like burnt hair. It's the worst. It's the worst.
This has like Manson vibes. Like he's not doing any of it. He's just directing everyone to do it. But we all know that he's the mastermind and has these people in a chokehold.
Certainly, yeah, especially just the amount of pulling strings he could that was at a small level and then bigger and bigger and bigger. And to get them to drive like 2 hours with a driver to do these things and gleefully, it was when they were doing the attacks, they weren't like, sorry. They were like, ha 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 ha. Like it made them like it. Like he encouraged them to like relish the I don't know, the wildness of it, I guess.
Sam's grandson, Johnny Mast, was given the disposable camera that held images of the attacks and told by his cousin to
either hide it or get rid of it.
According to testimony, he hid it under some leaves in the woods before it was recovered by authorities. The photos were clear evidence of the attacks, with before and after images of each victim.
Right. Like Johnny was like, I think Even though he was very sheltered, was like, whenever they told me to destroy it, I was like, but the FBI just spent like the day after Thanksgiving, like tossing the house trying to find this. So he wanted to like comply socially, but legally still be good. So later on, when the FBI sat him down, they were like, you're going to be forced to testify against your grandpa. And also, if you don't give us the camera, basically, we're charging you too. And he was like, it's right over there in the woods. And the agents were like, the pictures looked fake. Like they looked so fake and staged, but we were horrified to be like, nope, this is just them literally documenting their crimes.
Wild. Even after his arrest, Sam Mullet could not resist asserting control. In recorded jailhouse phone calls, he said,
we had to do something to get their attention. Maybe now they'll start listening to God.
According to court records, these calls became crucial evidence in the federal trial that followed, painting a clear picture of premeditation and spiritual manipulation.
Yeah, at some point they're like, are these being recorded? He's just like, anyway, let's do some more stuff.
And again, he didn't know enough maybe about how things work in the outside world to know all of these calls are recorded and everybody can hear what you're saying.
And he was like, well, we're speaking in Amish, like an Amish dialect, the Dutch Pennsylvania dialect. It's like, yeah, so does Detective Mullet. Like other people also speak this language.
Or you would find an expert that could to translate them. As the case moved through pre-trial stages, the victims were not safe. On December 8th, 2011, Marty and Bob Miller woke up to a sign in their front yard reading, "It's not over." No further intimidation occurred. In July of 2012, a month before the trial started, all 16 defendants were offered plea deals that would reduce any possible prison time. One defendant decided that the devil was behind the offers and convinced all other defendants to refuse the deals as well.
Yeah, apparently they presented to him with all of them in the same room, and then one of them just started hollering, the devil is behind this, the devil. And they're like, yeah, the devil is behind this. And, of course, Sam's not going to tell anybody not to take it. So that later on, I believe the law enforcement was like, we probably should have separated them and individually offered them deals, but it's fine.
There's probably some concern about accepting something like that in front of your peers that are also in this community, which is, again, why they should separate them so you can have, privacy and autonomy to make that decision.
Especially get Sam out of the room at the very least.
The trial began on August 28th, 2012 at the federal courthouse in Cleveland, Ohio. Prosecutors framed the attacks as religiously motivated hate crimes. They argued that Mullet and his clan targeted their victims, quote, because of the victims' Amish religious beliefs and significance of the beard/hair in those beliefs. Defense attorneys pushed back, asserting that the feuds were
personal family disputes
and not about religion. This distinction would become a crucial legal debate. As the first ever federal hate crime prosecution for intra-religious violence, the case garnered national attention and set the stage for a landmark trial. The proceedings ran for 3 weeks. The media descended, snapping photos of Amish defendants, who typically do not involve themselves in litigation, sitting in a modern-day courtroom. Soon, news outlets across the world were referring to the
Amish beard-cutting trial.
Sam Mullet, then 66 years old, sat at the defense table looking stoic beneath his long, graying beard, ironically intact.
Yeah, it really brought out a lot of legal scholars oddly on the side of the Amish, saying that this is not the intention of the hate crimes bill. But the prosecutors, I think it was a newer law, and they saw a wrong, and they were trying to address the wrong with the law that they had at the time.
Yeah, I would argue that it's a hate crime.
Yeah, I mean, the statute prohibits willfully causing bodily injury to any person because of the actual or perceived religion of that person. So it was an expansion of the 1968 law.
Prosecutors methodically outlined how Mullet exercised cult-like control over Bergholz. They brought Amish victims to the stand, who tearfully recounted the terror of being attacked by their own kin. Another witness described how Mullet engaged in sexual intercourse with her under the guise of marital therapy in an effort to show his control.
The defense did try to get any of the sex stuff strict because they said it was not relevant, but the prosecution did get it in to say that's why these 16 defendants acted, is because this man could do anything, including get them to hand over their wives. So it was relevant in that sense.
Kind of all lumped together. Photographic evidence was shown of hacked off hair scattered on floors. An FBI agent testified that Mullet orchestrated the attacks to
punish and humble
those who opposed him. The government's most important argument was that the attacks were religiously motivated hate crimes. They argued that Mullet targeted the Amish victims specifically because of their religious significance of hair and beards, intending to diminish and terrorize them within their faith community. To bolster this, expert witness Donald Craybill, a prominent Amish scholar and author of the book Renegade Amish, testified that Bergholz was viewed as an outlier sect and that in Amish culture, cutting someone's beard is an assault on their religion. Mullet's defense team did not dispute that the hair cuttings occurred. Instead, they challenged the motive. They characterized the incidents as, quote, family feuds resulting from interpersonal animosity, not based in religion. Defense lawyers pointed out long-standing grudges and marriages gone sour between the parties. They argued that applying a hate crime law in what was essentially an Amish-on-Amish family dispute, quote, stretched the bounds of the statute. One defense lawyer, who happened to be an ex-Amish, explained that while bizarre, the attacks were born from a twisted internal logic of one community, not hatred toward a different religion. The defense also attempted to downplay Mullet's role, portraying him as a strict father figure who didn't explicitly order violence.
You read his grandson's book of all the heinous, fucked up shit he did, and then you hear the defense go, he was just a sweet grandpa that just had some funny ideas.
He's sleeping with his nephew's 28-year-old wife.
Yeah, and he's like encouraging like literal Amish fight club. He's telling them to whip each other's asses for his own amusement. Like, no, I don't think he's just a kindly old man with some strange ideas.
Not even a little bit. Despite the defense's claims, testimony during the trial reinforced how domineering and charismatic Sam Mullet was. Witnesses, including some of the defendants who took plea deals, described how Mullet
didn't like to be crossed
and manipulated his followers' religious devotion. In one dramatic moment, an FBI agent read aloud Mullet's own words from a secretly recorded conversation, saying,
I ain't no cult leader, but I am the law here.
So
I'm the permanent bishop forever. I'm the direct line to God, but I'm not a cult leader.
But I am the law, so anything I say goes. I mean,
pretty much.
You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig.
Call it what you want to, but we know.
On September 20th, 2012, the jury delivered its verdict. All 16 defendants were found guilty on 87 out of 90 charges. Most notably, the jury upheld the hate crime charges, finding that the government successfully proved religious motivation. It was the first time the federal hate crime law from 2009 was used to convict attackers for violence within the same faith community. Mullet showed little emotion as the verdict was read, but some of his family members sobbed.
And I thought it was good, an interesting thing that they did 87 out of 90 charges, which means I feel like they really looked at each and every charge and said, did the government carry its burden? And the fact that, 87 out of 90, mostly.
That's, the odds were not in his favor, but they were certainly in the victim's favor. On February 8th, 2013, the federal judge delivered stern words to the Bergholz defendants, saying their crimes were
serious offenses against not just individuals, but an entire faith tradition.
He noted the lasting trauma inflicted on victims as evidenced by their powerful testimony. As the ringleader, Mullet received a 15-year term. The other 15 followers received sentences ranging from 7 years to 1 year and 1 day in federal prison. Key lieutenants who planned and led the raids got terms in the upper end, 5 to 7 years, while those with lesser roles, including several women who had helped restrain victims or plotted attacks, received lighter sentences of a year or 2. All sentences included the hate crime enhancement, which significantly increased the prison time compared to assault alone. The sentencing made headlines nationwide. Amish typically do not celebrate punishment, but there was relief in the community that Mullet's reign over his flock was over. In March of 2013, those sentenced began reporting to federal prisons. Sam Mullet, with his beard now prison trimmed, was assigned to a penitentiary in Texas, though he was later transferred. Most of his followers were sent to facilities closer to Ohio. News photos showed the men, awkward in orange jumpsuits, entering jail. Back in Bergholz, only women, children, and a handful of unindicted men remained.
And pretty much everybody looked to his grandson, Johnny, who was like 19 or 20. And they're like, well, what do we do now? And he's like, I don't know, just like, I don't know, live your lives. Cause Johnny was not like, give me the reins, I'm in charge now. He
No.
was just like, oh, be nice to each other. I don't know, be
He had
cool.
a moral compass. He hid the
was
camera.
sweet.
He knew that he was, something was not right.
I mean, I think after he asked his uncle, I think after he asked his granddad, like, why are you sleeping with all these women? And he's like, it gives me power. And Johnny said, well, can I have some of the power? And Sam was like, you have to go live above the garage now. That Johnny was like, oh, okay. So it's like that. Like,
because he's the threat.
Even I can get punished. So yeah, he said he just kind of tried to maintain the status quo, but not like the Sam status quo, like the Amish status quo.
It's like the FLDS too, kicking out boys once they reach a certain age because they no longer are boys. They're now your competition with the young women you're trying to bed.
Mm-hmm. Sinisterhood will be right back. Does anyone else struggle with health goals? I want to succeed, but sometimes it's difficult to find the motivation without someone supporting me and keeping me accountable.
We're so excited to partner with Faye because let's be real, food and nutrition can feel overwhelming. Faye connects you with a personal registered dietitian who provides expert, science-backed guidance that's actually accessible and affordable.
Whether you want to support your overall health, manage a condition, or just feel better in your body, Faye has a dietitian for you. And the best part, they accept insurance, over 700 plus plans, so you'll likely pay $0. That's less questionable than a gas station granola bar.
Tired of cookie cutter nutrition advice that doesn't consider you? Well, Faye dietitians work one-on-one to create a plan that fits your needs, lifestyle, and goals without the shame, stress, or fad diets. It's not just about what you eat, but how you feel, helping you build a healthier, more positive relationship with food.
And it works. 93% of Faye clients say they feel better about food, and 85% reach their health goals. A third-party study found that working with a Faye dietitian led to a 2.9 times better results than other programs. So if you're ready for personalized, judgment-free support, Faye has got you covered. It's super duper easy to sign up. There's a huge network of registered dietitians. So anything you're looking to do under the sun, there's somebody there. And having a registered dietitian is really helpful because food is truly like an everyday thing we put in us that changes our life. And for me, I'm like, I don't know what to eat. Say chicken nuggets. It's like, you're not a child anymore. Sometimes you need nutrition. So it's helpful to have a handhold.
You need help from the experts. Having a personalized nutritionist used to cost big bucks, but not anymore with Faye. Listeners of Sinisterhood can qualify to see a registered dietitian for as little as $0 by visiting faynutrition.com/creepy.
That's faynutrition.com/creepy. One last time, that's faynutrition.com/creepy, and make sure you use our URL so they know we sent you. Sinisterhood will be right back.
After the conviction, Mullet's defense attorney told reporters,
there was very little, in fact, no evidence connecting Sam Mullet to any of these matters. The government was successful in convincing the jury that he had a Svengali-like influence over these people.
Sam Mullet and his co-defendants appealed their convictions, focusing on the hate crime charges. The key legal question was whether the government had proven that religious motivation was the driving factor in the attacks versus mere personal revenge. In August of 2014, the 6th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Cincinnati issued a 2-1 ruling, overturning the federal hate crime convictions for all 16 defendants. One judge dissented forcefully, writing that the evidence of religious animus was
overwhelming and unrefuted,
as Mullet had described his victims as betrayers of the faith. Nonetheless, the hate crime convictions were vacated.
And it was this big issue. And in fact, it was just because one Supreme Court case came out in 2014. So the time between the law was passed in 2009, convicted in 2013, 2014 becomes the Supreme Court decision that determined if a statute like the hate crime statute uses the phrase because of, and that's what this one said, because of actual or perceived religion, that means the crimes had to be 100% because of religion. And not what the prosecution argued at Sam Mullet's trial, a significant factor. The government in the jury charge, and that's like the importance of a jury charge, cannot say anything that goes against the statute. So the statute, it says, because of the jury charge should have said, you are finding that unless these people were not Amish, Sam Mullet would not have done this crime, or would, and because the jury charge wasn't right, and this Supreme Court case was decided in 2014, I mean, under the current framework of jurisprudence, it was correctly decided. The Sixth Circuit essentially said, sorry, the Supreme Court's ruled on it before you could get to us, so we kind of got to go with them. And it's not really a hate crime. It's an assault, but it's not 100%. We're only attacking them because they're Amish. It's like he was kind of attacking them because they left him. They weren't doing Amish the right way. They weren't, it's not quite the same as going, I'm going to go find me an Amish, and I don't care which one it is. It was like, I want the guy that told me my excommunications weren't valid. I want that guy. Well, it's like, that's kind of revenge.
Yeah. At the same time, like you said, if they weren't Amish, cutting their beard and hair wouldn't have even been like a thing that you would do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I think the language of the statute is kind of the problem. Why, or not really the problem, but the language of the statute's why it got overturned, because you're right. I think they wouldn't have attacked him in that way, but the statute says they had to only have attacked him because of their religion.
I would agree with that then. Yeah. It wasn't only, it was mainly because they disagreed with him. It all was under the umbrella of Amish faith and, him being the self-appointed bishop and whatnot. However, I would agree with that language. Yeah.
They really hammered on the phrase "but for," like it's the "but for" causation of like, but for them being Amish, they would not have been attacked. And it's like, he didn't just attack any Amish people. He attacked the ones that took his kids, or the ones that told him he wasn't official, or the one, all that stuff. So it's one of those where it's like a technicality kind of, but you also don't want a federal statute that is as vital as a hate crime statute to be watered down, or like open to the fact, open such that it's not effectuating its purpose anymore, and that maybe later on the whole act gets overturned because of multiple convictions that are sort of misusing it. So that precision of language and like maintaining that precision in decisions is like vital.
The Sixth Circuit's decisions did not overturn the other convictions, including conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and other lesser charges. The DOJ faced a choice: retry the defendants on hate crimes under the stricter standard, or drop those counts. The government chose not to retry the hate crime charges. Instead, prosecutors moved for resentencing based on the remaining convictions. At a new sentencing hearing on March 2nd, 2015, all 16 defendants received shorter terms. Sam Mullet's term was reduced from 15 years to 10 years and 9 months. Other sentences were cut roughly in half. The longest for a follower became about 6 years, and the shortest became time served. Most of the women and a few men were released promptly, having already spent around 3 years in prison.
It still changes you 3 years in the Fed.
Oh, yes. Especially going from the Amish homestead to a prison. That is a stark difference.
Absolutely.
With Sam Mullet and many male members incarcerated after 2013, the Bergholz Amish settlement was effectively leaderless. Mullet's wife, family members, and a few loyal men who avoided prison kept the farmsteads going. There were reports that some remaining members gradually drifted away to rejoin other Amish communities once Mullet was gone. Others stayed, awaiting Mullet's eventual return. The community's population dwindled from its peak of about 18 families down to just a few.
And when your family has like maybe 6 kids on the low end and 20 kids on the high end, 18 families is going down to a few.
Yeah. They all got a lot of kids. By 2016, almost all of the convicted Bergholz followers, aside from Mullet, had been released from prison, having served their reduced terms. Some of these individuals returned to Bergholz, while others chose not to. One of Mullet's sons said he was done with the violence and just wanted a normal Amish life for his children. In March of 2020, 75-year-old Sam Mullet was moved from a halfway house to his own home due to concerns of the COVID-19 pandemic. He was released from federal custody in late January of 2021. He was 75 years old. He returned to Jefferson County, Ohio, to a residence near the original Bergholz farm. By this time, his once imposing community was much reduced. He gave no major interviews. As of May 2025, Sam Mullet is alive, around 79 years old, and living quietly in Ohio. In 2025, one of the investigating FBI agents told producers for How I Escaped My Cult that the current day Bergholz community has
Still got problems. Hopefully they'll resolve it someday, but I wouldn't count on that.
Mullet's beloved grandson, Johnny, whose testimony and camera were instrumental in the convictions, has left the Amish lifestyle. He is now married with 2 children and runs a successful horseshoeing business. He loves to travel and even authored the book Breakaway Amish about his time in the Bergholz clan. He told How I Escaped My Cult.
The Amish do put a lot of emphasis on forgiveness, and I realize I truly have to forgive Sam.
So what do we think?
Well, I'm glad Johnny's thriving. He wrote in
Yeah.
his book as a kid, he just loved horses. And he's like, I just always just wanted to be around the horses. And now to see that he's a horseshoeing guy, I'm like, fuck yeah, you got your dream, buddy.
He probably
Good for
knows a
you.
lot about him too, since that's how they got around.
Yeah, you just feel bad for a community that is vulnerable like this, given like I already sort of like self-imposed isolation and no contact with the authorities, like specifically not reporting things. It leaves you unfortunately open to horrific predators. One of the bishops was like, while we are a, God-fearing, law-abiding, faithful community, that does not mean that we don't have wicked hearts among us. And those wicked hearts, it's like the wolf in sheep's clothing. Like I think Sam knew every single one of the vulnerabilities and was like, and I'll take this and this and this and this. I just want to know, like, what had him crack? Like, what really was like, was he always going to do this? Or I don't know, like how somebody gets so far gone from going, I want to be the most conservative, like follow God the most, to all of a sudden you're like, there's Coke in the barn and a girl in my bed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just wild to see that change over. I mean, it's over decades, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, most splinter groups are like, they're not doing the things the way we want to do them anymore. I know better. And then, for a while, it might be a little bit of the same. And then I think just that power seeps in and you see how easy it is to manipulate people and get things that you probably know are wrong, but that doesn't mean you don't still want them, like somebody else's wife or drugs or
money,
revenge, money. Yeah, all of those things.
Starts feeling good. But yeah, him telling Johnny, and he says it in the How I Escaped My Cult, I get power from it. It gives me power. And like, I'm sure it did in a certain way, because it's a power. If you're in a community that values communal decision-making, non-individuality. That's why they don't take photos. You don't have cars, because it's like, well, my car is a red Camaro. What's your car? It's these, we all drive the same buggies. We all have horses, like, so that we can all remain humble. That, yeah, as soon as you have a little bit of taste of like, why don't you go over there and punch that guy in the face and see what happens? And then they do it. You're like, ooh, what else can I get them to do?
Yeah.
And it's like eerie just to think that a predator like that lasted as long as he did. And at least he spent some time in jail. And I think that just getting him away is like the key to letting people scatter and figure out their own lives.
Usually when the leader goes, it slowly falls apart. However, there's always a group of faithfuls that remain. And it sounds like that's still the case. It also sounds like they still got a lot of drama, which, I mean, when like your whole community is kind of founded on drama, I imagine it sticks around because you don't have a ton of outsiders to like change things up. It's just the same news and problems recirculating over and over again in your small community.
Most definitely. Well, a couple of bishops had said to Donald Craybill in his book, Renegade Amish, like, we all are like looking out for something like this in the future. We all now realize, oh God, somebody should have said something. We should have done something way before 2006. He was already having sex with some of the women, or at least talking about it or whatever, and locking people in chicken coops. So I think there is at least an increased awareness. And like, sometimes we do need to call 911. Like, we don't want to, but like for saving others and for safety purposes, sometimes we need to. So
yeah. And it's a moral quandary if you're in a faith that doesn't really use that. It's also interesting of the line that gets crossed to make you decide, no, now we have to.
Yeah.
Because some people, I think, and many did before, Miller decided to call, but they're like, we don't do that. So we're not going to.
Yeah, I think it was the framing of by calling, you're going to stop someone else's harm. That then it was like, okay, it's a generous act. I'm not calling to rat somebody. I'm calling to stop. I'm not just calling to tattle. I want to stop a harm from coming forward.
And you can also call to tattle because he should have been brought to in front of a court for all this other shit too, for sure.
Yeah, he was kidnapping people, all that stuff. But fascinating too, what it says about the hate crime statute, and that it's a good point of like one of the Harvard law professors said, if one person if it's a husband and wife and they're both Christian and the husband is like hits his wife because he thinks it's part of their religion, and she says, my religion isn't, we don't want to necessarily go in and mediate disputes when the actions are really more based on like interpersonal relationships, that this is for an outsider. But the intra-religious argument's an interesting one, but sounds like if there's but-for causation, they can use it.
Well, never hit your wife, no matter what your religion says. That's always illegal, in my opinion.
Just Judge Christie's court. You always straight to jail.
But it is interesting that a lot of religions or cultures, they do choose to handle it internally, and that stuff is allowed. And I'm glad that, I'm not in one of those.
Truly, yeah. And having resources you can always call 911. We're a neutral third party. Well, you can always call 911. That's a loaded statement. But hopefully there are resources that will help folks out when they are in a situation like this and do not want to be.
For sure.
This episode of Sinisterhood is made possible with the help of our amazing patrons.
If you're interested in supporting the show, consider joining our Patreon. You'll get access to ad-free regular episodes, weekly bonus content, you're able to vote on episode topics, join our monthly live streams, and more.
Keep it creepy.
Mwahaha.